Training camp is well underway, and you are starting to get news pop up on your timeline every single day. This rookie is killing it. This running back is going to take the primary role. Today, we're going to talk about some of the major headlines going around up to date, even as of yesterday in NFL training camp, showing you if these are real storylines that I am buying, how this might affect the Dynasty market, and what you should be doing about it in your league. If you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to the channel here at Dynasty Price Check as we are ramping back up again for the season. The long wait of the offseason is over. Thank you guys so much for the continued support. Don't forget to hop over to dynastypricecheck.com and use these awesome tools for free and submit your trades for next episode of Trade Titans. The first player we're going to talk about today is Kyler Murray, and yes, he has been named the starter of the Minnesota Vikings. I think we all knew this was going to happen. I did not expect to see J.J. McCarthy coming out here and 9 to be starting and actually competing after they went out and signed Kyler in free agency. But I do want to point that Kyler over on this Dynasty value chart, which you can see on the Dynasty Price Exchange, he got this massive spike after the free agency signing. That's no surprise. But since then, his price on the open market has really died off quite a bit. And even then, it's getting a spike again. Now he's been named the starter. We're getting closer to the fantasy season. People want points on their roster. That's to be expected. But at 3,900 Dynasty value points, about to hit that 4,000 mark, you are still finding a very comfortable buy range for Kyler Murray. In fact, if you want to go ahead and really dive deep into it, you still have plenty of opportunities to buy him, in my opinion, especially if you are a contending roster and maybe you want to start stacking some value on your roster. If you are playing with a quarterback, maybe like a Dak Prescott or a Jordan Love or hell, even a Tyler Shook, who I see go ahead of Kyler Murray in startups a lot of times still these days, even as early as or as late as last week, then I think you have an opportunity to maybe pull a tear down trade off here. Maybe you can get, someone coming back that's actually gonna be a difference maker on your roster this year. Probably not someone of extreme value, but I'm even thinking like a Jordan Addison type, maybe a David Montgomery, maybe a Zach Charbonnet in a second, maybe a Wan'Dale Robinson. And you're going to have to be the one to decide, is that going to be the game changer for my roster? Maybe it's a Michael Wilson. I do think that, especially if you play in deeper leagues, you have the opportunity to do so. But since this was something I mostly expected, and I think you guys did too, I'm not going to go ahead and spend too much time on this one. Also, just as a solid reminder, guys, I am not the most perfect newscaster here. I'm pulling a lot of my news from Twitter, which there's some awesome accounts that you guys can follow that I just want to shout out because they really do such a good job, and they're not asking me for this, but Dynasty Angle out there, Dynasty Zach, these guys are, friends. We talk back and forth on Twitter, and man, they're giving some great news here, so I wanted to just highlight them as we continue some of the news. Let's talk A.J. Brown, though, because you're getting a lot of highlights here of A.J. Brown cooking Sauce Gardner left and right, and, really starting to rise to the occasion in New England, and that chemistry is building with Drake May. I mean, you're seeing even yesterday, May finished 15 of 23 with 1 interception against the Colts in all the team drills. A.J. Brown led all of that. He was, had 5 catches. You probably saw the highlight clip of him in the back of the end zone, making a nice toe tapping catch. And honestly, he's been cooking sauce in some of these highlights as well. I think we all expected A.J. Brown to, truly rise up again this year and be the alpha, but he's coming out here. Clearly, he's out for blood. He wants to make a statement. I do think he's one of the more affordable potential wide receiver ones you can get out there. And I know I say affordable, sitting at 5,000 Dynasty value points. Yes, his chart has been nothing but up. We all expected the trade, even when it hit. You got a nice uptick, and now obviously he's playing well again. The training camp highlights are coming out. Look at these last couple days. You're seeing spikes and spikes and spikes. So the price is going to continue to go up. However, a startup draft we just did about a week ago, A.J. Brown went at the 502. Rashee Rice went a pick before him. I would gladly take A.J. Brown over Rashee Rice. We're going to talk more about Rice later in some of the clip highlights that are coming out of camp. And, he's struggling a little bit, I think, coming off that knee and maybe the jail time. And he's been one of my fade guys kind of all offseason, especially in Dynasty with the risk he holds, but I couldn't be more on that train. I do think, if you are a Luther Burden owner and you really want to win this year and you have an opportunity to win, I would be probably flipping it for A.J. Brown. I watched Luther Burden in this exact startup I'm referencing here go at the 412, A.J. Brown go at the 5.2. So I still think there's an opportunity here to go ahead and buy A.J. Brown. And I know we all like to act like he's super old, but, this New England Patriots connection, while they're in this contending window, probably going to get 2, if not 3 really good years out of A.J. Brown still here. If you go ahead and look at some recent trades, I mean, this is back in April, but Bucky Irving for A.J. Brown in a 27 third, I doubt that happens today. Like, this was a steal in my opinion for A.J. Brown. I don't think Bucky's going to be as material as we expect. Jaden Higgins in a 27 first. This is probably a lot more accurate. I do think with the nice news around Jaden Higgins in camp right now, which we'll talk about him in a moment also. So don't go anywhere. I'm going to be trying to cover almost everybody that is getting some buzz here and tell you guys what I think about them. I do think that, this is a deal that probably actually does get done in a lot of leagues if someone's trying to move off A.J. Brown or, start a retool, maybe a 1-year punt. So I like both those prices, especially if you're a contender. If you think your 27 first is going to be late, I mean, you very well could be buying a top 10 wide receiver this year. I think I have A.J. Brown in my expected just redraft rankings right now to finish it around wide receiver 8. So 8 to 12. Very good buy range for him right now. But let's go ahead and talk a little bit more about what's going on in camp. The next one I want to talk about right now is none other than San Francisco 49ers wide receiver Dazon Stribling. And so when he first got drafted here, guys, and you can see there's no chart for him. He's a freshly drafted rookie. He was going so low on the Dynasty market for so long of this offseason. I mean, I picked him up off waivers in some leagues. I picked him up in the 4th round. I picked him up at the 310 in a couple of leagues. Like, this is a man that, was very much being just kind of written off. Now, the Ricky Pierce Hall injury has opened up some opportunity for him. Let's not deny that. He was a little bit of an older prospect when it comes to Dynasty, 23 years old. I think a lot of people expected him to kind of fill in, maybe play that Juwan Jennings type role. He is 6'2", 207 pounds, definitely has some upside here. He was a guy that could absolutely, win a high pointed ball at Ole Miss. And, by all reports here, I'm just going to read a couple of the training camp news blurbs that I think are really important to know. Dazon Stribling making significant noise, currently listed as wide receiver 2 on San Francisco's unofficial depth chart. So we'll see if that keeps going. The praise keeps getting louder. Grant Cohen, one of the beat reporters and San Francisco 49ers podcasters, called him the best receiver on the roster right now. He's already capable of stressing defenses before a preseason game. Now, obviously, this is training camp, right, guys? So I'm not saying he's going to outshine Mike Evans or anything here. That man's a perennial, probably Hall of Famer. That all being said, though, premium draft capital was spent on Stribling, 33rd overall, the very first pick in the 2nd round. Pierce Hall's out for the year. They need someone to step up here. We've seen the 49ers track record as it comes to injuries, and so I do think, probably not a bad option if you can still go out and buy him. If you look July 29th here, obviously his stock is already rising, a 2029 2nd round pick for Stribling. I think this is probably a fair price, guys. I mean, that's so far away now, 2029, that if you are looking to contend and maybe you're trying to, stack that wide receiver room a bit, or you feel like you have a strong roster and you're not too worried about sending a little bit of future draft capital away, 29 second, I think is fine. I've seen him fly up boards recently, and even, to be frank, saw him go in the early 2nd round, almost a 1st round pick in the 201 in my salary cap league that's doing their rookie draft right now. We're a little bit late to the party, because, man, is this league complicated. If you guys want to hear me talk about the salary cap league ever and just showcase it on the channel, I'm sure not a lot of people will follow along, but go ahead and let me know in the comments, because, man, is it so much fun. We are using League Tycoon for the app. It's definitely an interesting way to play Dynasty. You get contracts, player extensions, franchise tags, along with, all the other elements of Dynasty. So definitely for the hardcores, but super fun. Okay, next one. It's got to be Devon Achane. And, I think a lot of people were worried about Achane coming into this season, myself included to some degree, as I do think, Tua was a check down merchant. Like, Mike McDaniels was able to really elevate him and his usage in that offense. You've got so many new pieces there. That offense overall really struggling in the wide receiver pass catching department. Can Malik Willis be the guy? I've been very skeptical of that. I'll own it that, I think he's kind of like this Justin Fields, probably definitely better than Justin Fields is in the passing department, but I do just think like terrible supporting cast around him. I view him more as a bridge. I expect Miami to have a high draft pick. All that is totally fair and I think warranted to be speculative of. But, I won't lie. Like, the training camp footage looks good. By all accounts, Malik Willis is playing well. But this one's a real clear one. Devon Achane, could be leaned on heavily. And the head coach over here, Jeff Hafley, said and joked, there may be games where Achane is so heavily utilized that they'll have to carry him from the locker room after the game because he's so exhausted. And of course, that's mostly a joke, but it doesn't seem like they're ramping down Achane's usage at all. Obviously, he signs a pretty sizable extension in Miami, so they've committed their future to him. Still only 24 years old. He's going to be 25 this season, sitting at 6,800 Dynasty value points. If you go ahead and see, though, since February, he has lost a significant amount of value just on the open market, like 7,200 Dynasty value points, now down to 6,800. And so if you've been waiting for a chance to potentially buy a hammer running back and Devon Achane was out of your price range, he might just be back in your price range. Like if we go ahead and look here, I mean, this is definitely an interesting trade where this person on May 7th went ahead and sent Bijan Robinson and Emmanuel Wilson away, brought back Nico Collins, Devon Achane, and Quentin Johnston. I don't hate it that much. I know a lot of people are going to be like, this is not nearly enough for Bijan. I think Nico Collins still very well in line to have a top 12 season this year if CJ Stroud can just, maybe find a little bit more of rookie CJ Stroud and a little bit less of playoff CJ Stroud from last year. We'll talk Jaden Higgins in a moment, but still a lot of opportunity in that room. Still 27 years old, Nico Collins. I'm not thinking his dynasty value just evaporates tomorrow. But this is not necessarily a bad deal, especially in a start 11 format. I don't know if I would be doing it. I'd probably want a little bit more for Bijan, or I'd probably like to walk it down and do what I like to do, where I'll tear down to Achane, then I'll tear down to JT, then I'll tear down to Cam Scadaboo, then I'll tear down to David Montgomery, and I'll just keep printing firsts. And it's like, okay, now I got 4 or 5 firsts on my way down, and I still have a running back in the mix. That all being said, this is a trade I actually did where I sent Devon Achane in the 103 away for Jackson Smith and Jigba, given I actually have some pretty solid running back luxury in this league, and this was a deal that I just did not want to pass up here. I think the 103 ended up being Jordan Tyson. So all being said, stand by the deal. You guys can let me know if I got flamed in the comments here, but I think bringing JSN onto any roster is something that is very hard to do and probably is damn near impossible in almost any league. So when I get the opportunity, I do it. That all being said, Achane probably still going to be heavily utilized. I think a lot of people are going to be changing their tone on Achane in the first couple weeks here. The next guy we're talking about here is Parker Washington. Yes, he is. This chart is insane, guys. And as you can see here, the Dynasty Price Check exchange is saying it's time to sell. And I don't entirely disagree. Okay. Like I do think Parker Washington, very talented. I'm going to read a couple camp reports here. And of course, like they're all going to be glowing. Everybody's talking him up like crazy. Parker Washington staying on the field. Jaguars beat reporter John Shipley believes Washington will remain on the field even in 1 and 2 wide receiver sets. Washington has indicated that he'll play in both 12 and 13 personnel, while Travis Hunter primarily works on the outside. This is a guy that is, getting a highlight reel catch on every single feed, every single day. I know the friends over at the Lineup Fantasy Football podcast that were on the Trey Titan show, Mitch and Mello, are completely and utterly floored with Parker Washington. They're talking about him like he's going to be a wide receiver 1 in Dynasty. No, shout out to those guys. But I got to stand strong here with my process moves and say, I think it's time to sell Parker Washington. And it's not because I don't think he's talented and I don't think he's going to have utilization this year. I do. I just think the way he's flown up boards, like he went in the early 7th round at the 707 here, actually, in this Dynasty startup from the other day. But again, like Tucker Kraft went later than him in a tight end, in a tight end premium. I know he's coming off a injury discount here, but then, you've got guys like Josh Jacobs who, say what you want about him, and we'll talk about him in a moment here with the groin issue. But, this guy could potentially be a league winner for you. You've got, Sam Laporta going a little later than him. You can get Jared Goff after him. I mean, these are some pretty solid contending pieces to have. And I know Parker Washington, 24 years old, but at 4,200 Dynasty value points, we were just talking about Kyler Murray at 3,900. And I know, say what you want, like Kyler, he's on a 1-year deal, yada, yada, yada. I mean, Kyler has given you top 10 finishes at the quarterback position and offers an insane amount of rushing upside in a super flex format. I just don't know if with this depth chart in Jacksonville, you've got Brenton Strange, you've got Jacoby Myers, you got Travis Hunter obviously being worked in here and there. You got Brian Thomas Jr., who gave you a top 6 finish at the wide receiver position just a year ago. I do think it's going to be a little difficult to get Parker Washington the amount of volume that is being promised for his price right now. And so while I'm not telling you Parker Washington is a bad player or not a guy I want on my roster, if you got him cheap and this is entirely just all gravy for you, sure, ride him into the season. You're kind of playing with the house's money. I'm just saying, if you are a roster that maybe is a bit thin, need to start adding some depth, maybe if you are potentially exploring a one-year punt or a retool, I don't know if Parker Washington's value goes a whole lot higher than here. And so you might be able to be, capitalizing and getting picks back for him. Like, I've already seen him go for first round picks. I saw him go for Casey Concepcion straight up the other day. And, Concepcion went at 106, 107 in that rookie draft. So essentially, we're already saying Parker Washington is worth a mid first in this year's draft class. I mean, this is a trade I really like. Parker Washington and Bucky Irving for Kenneth Walker. I think Kenneth Walker is going to be an absolute superstar on the Chiefs. Like, they invested the money in him. He was held down in Seattle by that system. Patrick Mahomes coming off a knee injury. Not exactly the strongest pass catching room, regardless of what we want to say, with Rashee Rice there and Xavier Worthy and Travis Kelce. Rice on the last year of his deal. Kelce already pretty old, and definitely probably this is his twilight year. And then, Worthy hasn't really shown you a lot. Now, we will talk Cyrus Allen in a little bit here, guys, so don't think I'm going to avoid that topic. I've actually been telling you to buy Cyrus Allen since February. You can go fact check me over on TikTok. But this one's crazy, right? March 29th, Parker Washington for the 206. I think that's a steal, right? And so back in March, that's what you could get him at. Now, what? He's a whole round higher? Like I just mentioned, he went for Concepcion, who goes, normally at the 106, 107. So, I think Parker Washington, definitely an opportunity to sell. The news is going to keep coming out. People are going to continue to glaze him. That's totally fine. But, I think Parker Washington, definitely an opportunity here if you so feel like selling. Let's talk about the next guy, though, and that's Rashee Rice. I've been mentioning him a little bit here already, but the clips have not looked that great to me, guys. And normally, I will say, running backs are hard for me to scout. Like, I think scouting running backs are difficult, especially in training camp. You can't see people tackling. No one's going 100%. Of course, there's going to be holes and gaps open. And, people are just trying new plays, learning new things. The defense isn't, the entire first team unit. I can make a million different excuses for this, but wide receivers, I do kind of pride myself in the ability to tag them. I mean, if you remember me, guys, the real, shout that I had about a year ago was I was telling you all last offseason, since the minute the season ended, to buy Jackson Smith-Njigba. He came out. He was damn near wide receiver 1 overall, offensive player of the year. This guy is now the bona fide Dynasty wide receiver 1A, 1B, probably with Jamar Chase. Maybe Puka's mixed in there, but yeah, I mean, JSN is an ascending star, and I could see it early, and I could see it again with some other guys here this offseason that I really liked and have been telling you to keep eyes on, and now are making headlines in training camp. Some of those guys, like I said, being Cyrus Allen. One of my main shouts from very early last year is Jakobi Lane, and by all accounts, he is absolutely crushing it in Baltimore Ravens camp. In fact, I'll share a quote later, but it was essentially that in all of his years, a beat reporter for the Baltimore Ravens, 20 plus years covering the team, he has never seen anybody dominate training camp and make continuous highlight reel plays the way Jakobi Lane is making them. Now, of course, we don't know if that's going to translate to fantasy production right out of the gate, but definitely an encouraging sign. All to be said, I like watching wide receiver tape a lot, and Rashee Rice is in for a little bit of a reality check in my mind right now. He doesn't look like the same version of himself. I do think the knee is going to slow him down a little bit, and maybe that changes, and maybe he's just taking it easy here, and season's going to start, and he's going to be the yak monster. They're going to scheme him open a million times behind the line of scrimmage and short passes, and he's going to eat in the red zone, and I'm going to eat my words. That's totally fine. I can understand if that's the case, but all being said, he's been a sell for me. I still stand on that. I think if you get a good first couple weeks out of him, I'm totally fine flipping him. I think dynasty-wise, this is probably his last year in KC. I can't imagine them paying him big money with all the issues he's had in the media and with the law. And now you're talking about a guy who's going to be 27 years old, coming off a major knee injury. I don't know what team's going to pay him big money. And does he work outside of the Kansas City scheme? I'm very skeptical of that. He is a lot more of a one-trick pony to me than having like a comprehensive route tree. And, I think like a good pivot point, Rome Odunze. Like, I think Rome Odunze is a guy that does have a very good route tree. I think Rome Odunze in a Ben Johnson offense can be incredible. I think Rome Odunze, even if the Bears don't commit to him long term, can still make waves across the league and, is a hardworking player regardless of coming off that injury. Let's look at a couple of these. June 2nd, Saquon Barkley and Rashee Rice, Nico Collins and Chase Brown. I love the Nico Collins, Chase Brown side of this. Like, I would obviously do Rashee Rice for Chase Brown straight up. I would do Rashee Rice to get up to Nico Collins, even if it's a 1-for-1, or if I have to throw in a second round pick, or maybe I have to throw in, a little bit of a deeper down player, someone that's going probably in like the 10th, 11th round of startups. I'm thinking maybe like a Nick Singleton, maybe a Xavier Worthy, Jaden Reed type. Like, I'm totally fine making deals like that. All to be said, I'm still out on Rashee Rice. I'm going to hold pretty firm on that one. Maybe as a 1-year rental, he could still win you a league, but not necessarily the world's biggest fan. Now, let's talk into second-year players here, okay? Because Pat Bryant is starting to get a little bit of an uptick again, and you can see it. It's reflected on the chart. I mean, look at just starting a few days ago. Here he is climbing back up again, even though he's kind of trickled off into oblivion over the course of the offseason. And guess what the website's telling you? It's telling you to sell because he's trading well above his upper band. And guys, if you want to zoom in here, I have it on the 6-month right now. This is what we're talking about here, okay? This range, this Bollinger Band, is kind of the value range that players are being traded in across the open market. And so anytime you see them spike out of this range, in a very, short period of time, that is indicating for you to take profits and sell. Now, of course, this is not the stock market. I'm not going to try to sit here and tell you Dynasty is only about manipulating the market, although I do think it's a very big part of the Dynasty fantasy football game. I think Pat Bryant is one of those guys that just, even if they're going to talk him up in training camp, which, look, I'll read a quote here, right? Pat Bryant hype is not slowing down. The drumbeat continues louder and louder. Sean Payton was asked how Denver planned to keep Pat Bryant off the field, and he simply replied, "We're not." I mean, sure, okay. What, are you going to use him in special teams? Are you going to use him? You're not saying how you're going to use him. Sure, he's going to be on the field. I think there's a lot of coach speak. I think there's a guy that's touting one of their younger wide receivers that potentially he's doing well in camp and wants to see continued growth and improvement. I just don't see a really, really solid path for him to be anywhat fantasy relevant this year. We traded, I'm not a Broncos fan, but they traded for, Jalen Waddle, spent premium capital on him. Courtland Sutton was just recently extended. Troy Franklin is still a young receiver, incredibly young prospect. Like, he's going to still have plenty of time on that team. Him and Bo Nix were college teammates. They have deep chemistry. You watched Troy Franklin have a little mini breakout last year even. And yes, some people have some question about the hands, but it's just, I hate to pull the mouths to feed argument. I don't see Pat Bryant giving you anything outside of maybe a best ball format of like a week or two of relevance, and so if I'm a dynasty player, I'm probably just taking my liquidity here. Like, let's go ahead and see May 12th, Pat Bryant and a third for Aaron Jones, Jordan Mason, and Will Shipley. Yeah, I think that's fine. Honestly, like, I know it doesn't sound like a great package, but someone's got to run the ball in Minnesota this year, and it's probably going to be Aaron Jones and Jordan Mason. So I guess you just shirt up that backfield. Maybe Devon Claiborne at the very end of the season, if there's a ton of injuries, gets some chances, but I don't expect that to happen. He was a very late round pick, and I like stashing him in the 4th rounder off waivers, but I'm not telling you he's going to have a path to relevancy. So, I think these are the type of deals, that you probably could get. I think if anyone's willing to really put some stock into this camp news that's going on right now, and you can get to any sense of relevancy and maybe get your way up to like an A.J. Barner or a Jalen McMillan or, maybe up to a Romeo Dobbs if you start throwing in a 3rd round pick or a 4th round pick, or maybe you go to the Gibbs owner and offer him Isaiah Pacheco included in this and try to work your way up, right, to maybe even a Ramondre Stevenson or a Jake Ferguson in a tight end premium that let some people down at the end of the season. I think is going to still be very relevant. But let's jump to another rookie wide receiver, actually, and we're going to jump back to the Miami Dolphins here and talk about Caleb Douglas and see, is Caleb Douglas the real deal? Is Caleb Douglas going to do anything for you? And again, no chart for Caleb Douglas. And the reason there's no charts is because their value has been so low on the dynasty market, guys, that there's been nothing to track. Like, barely any trades, barely any movement. Here we go, though. Caleb Douglas opens as the starter, with the 11s here for Miami's offense just yesterday. First on the unofficial depth chart. Looks to be a starting wide receiver here. He potentially could be a wide receiver 3 flex option. Chris Bell's health and availability might be something to continue to monitor as we get closer to the season here. Could that eat into the workload at all? I doubt it. All to be said, the opportunity is wide open in Miami. I'll give you that. So if you are definitely taking swings on guys in the later round of your draft, this should be a guy you're taking a swing on. I mean, 22 years old. Yep, coming out of Texas Tech. Wasn't exactly the most dominant college receiver we've ever witnessed, but this guy can absolutely grasp onto the opportunity that is in front of him and potentially deliver some fantasy production because Malik Willis has to put the ball somewhere. And they don't have anybody in this offense, really. So I think if you're talking, some deep swings here, Caleb Douglas, maybe he's now worth a third round pick. I'm not paying a 27th third, but a 28th third if you feel so inclined to do so. I think that's something interesting to explore. I think, if you're just playing the handcuff game or giving guys maybe some of their backups here, like I'm fine taking a swing on Caleb Douglas over a guy like Trey Tucker, Calvin Ridley. I doubt anyone will give you anything for him. Maybe if you want to throw Tyrone Tracy to the Scadaboo owner and see if you can get Douglas in a little kickback, like a fourth or a third, and maybe you're tossing in a fourth, so it's a pick swap at the end of the day. Maybe you want to give the James Cook owner Ray Davis and you want to take a shot on Caleb Douglas. I think those are totally fine moves. I just am not giving up the farm for Caleb Douglas tomorrow. And I don't think that's going to be wildly productive for you. Another one I did want to cover though here, and is getting a lot of good camp coverage, is Jonah Coleman. And I've talked about Jonah Coleman a ton. And if you guys haven't seen already, I have tons of short form videos on Jonah Coleman. I think Jonah Coleman is a great prospect. I think the 2024 Jonah Coleman was a standout last year, probably not as significant, for you, battling a bunch of injuries, but this is a guy that, still a very comfortable buy range in Dynasty for me. 3,100 Dynasty value points. You can get him around the 9th, 10th round of your Dynasty startups here. I mean, he's built like an absolute unit in a tank. We talk about his college stats and big reasons I like buying him. 70% conversion rate on third and short, 67% conversion rate on fourth down carries. I mean, those are pretty good numbers, all things considered. I mean, if he's going to get some goal line usage even in year one, that would be lovely to see. J.K. Dobbins has struggled to stay healthy in the past. R.J. Harvey was massively inefficient in between the tackles last year when he got his opportunities. So maybe he ends up being more of a passing game guy. And Jonah Coleman, but that's the thing. When you talk about hands, I think Jonah Coleman has the path to ascend to be the starter over time in Denver. It just depends on how much opportunity they give him. Like PPR usage, 88 receptions on 109 targets in college with only one drop. That's an 80.7% catch rate. I mean, that's fantastic. I think trades I like making, Ricky Pearsall, easy swap. I'll add a third round pick to that. I'll trade JCM and Jalen Coker away and go get Jonah Coleman and be happy about it. I'll go ahead and trade Rico Dowdle, for Jonah Coleman if I'm anywhere near, a retool or a 1 year punt, or maybe even Dowdle in a third, I'd be totally fine with. So I think Jonah Coleman, he's getting good praise in camp. I think it's worth taking a swing on him. Some other injury updates here. Let's look at Alec Pierce's chart real quick. Alec Pierce, he's starting to work through some stuff in camp, not running routes or anything crazy like that, but you're starting to see him do some individual work with the trainers here. Now his signal is a buy, and I'm going to go ahead and actually agree with this. I think you're probably getting a really good injury discount on Alec Pierce. He seems to be one of the guys that is actually seeing a realistic injury discount. I mean, we look at the chart here, guys, and this is why I love seeing it so visual. You can see what's actually happening on the market, and it really gives you a great feel if you play in several leagues, especially if you're like me and you're a DJ and you play in 15, 20 dynasty leagues and salary cap leagues and all this stuff. It's great to see the product visual on the screen, and it's at your fingertips. DynastyPriceCheck.com, nice and easy. Come on here. Alec Pierce, though, massive spike after the free agency signing. We all expected that. Now, Dynasty value points, 3,700 Dynasty value points now. He's been on this solid trickle off. And even here, you go ahead and see the reason he's getting into that buy range is, again, he's breaking the lower bound of this channel again. And, when I talk about trading, guys, and especially when we talk about player trading and player profile trading and how it might even relate to, charting these player prices here, I don't expect everyone to be expert stock trader, and by all means, neither am I. But, in the basics of anytime you're starting to break the channel, you're on a trend downwards, most likely, especially if you're touching this channel multiple times and then breaking through. And that's what's happened, right? He was playing on the lower bound of his value chart over and over, touching again here, breaking the band here, then riding the bottom, touching the bottom again, tiny little spike, then boom, we touch the bottom again, we break the bottom, and now we're breaking all the way out. And anytime you're breaking all the way out, you have opportunity, right? And 3,700 Dynasty value points, I mean, you can get a very good price on Alec Pierce right now. Like if we go ahead and look over even at the startup that we just did, to see where Alec Pierce is going. He went in the 9th round, 2 picks away from Travis Hunter, a pick before Jordan Addison, a pick after Kyle Monangai. Like, I would way rather take a swing on Alec Pierce than Kyle Monangai. Are you kidding me? Like, you're talking about an old prospect, 24 years old. He's going to be 25 this season. This guy's mostly a bruiser. I think he's a fine real-life NFL player, but fantasy football production, like barring a season-ending injury to DeAndre Swift, like, Kyle Monangai isn't exactly going to feed families, and I would way rather be spending the opportunity on Alec Pierce, who got a huge deal, 26 years old. Michael Pittman vacated targets. I mean, they are going to have to put him to work here. I mean, Zach Charbonnet only went like 6 or 7 picks later, and I like Zach Charbonnet. I've been telling you to buy him, but I think for the price you can get Alec Pierce at right now is actually pretty incredible. If you look May 7th, yeah, Alec Pierce acquired for the 110 in this year's class. I think that's a no-brainer. Like, if you're talking about, maybe taking a swing at the 110 on like I watched Nick Singleton go at the 110 the other day. I see Ty Simpson there, who, is several years away from starting. I think it's a fine value stash if you're a true rebuilder, but if you're anywhere near contending, like, give me Alec Pierce. Like, let's see if this one's any different. Javonte Williams in the 108 for Chase Brown and Alec Pierce. Yeah, again, I'll take the Chase Brown and Alec Pierce side very comfortably there. I think Chase Brown over Javonte and Alec Pierce, 108, probably pretty fair. This one was me actually acquiring a 27 first and the 212 for sending away Alec Pierce in a third. I stand by this trade. I like stacking 27 firsts, and I think I got Jakobi Lane actually with this 212 pick back on April 9th, so right around NFL draft time. I think he's going to age pretty well for me, but again, these are deals on both sides. You can see what I'm comfortable buying him for, and you can see what I'm comfortable selling him for. This is me, Dynasty PC, getting it done. So there you go. You've got more examples on the website if you guys want to go ahead and see. But let's talk about a few other players here, because I do want to make sure I am still covering everything and giving you guys as much insight as possible. Again, shout out to Dynasty Angle here. Like, I'm pulling a lot of these reports from his daily roundup. He does a great feed on Twitter. And so, I'll go ahead and link him in the description here so you guys can follow along, because I do think he's going to help keep you fresh on Dynasty stuff. And shout out to him, because I'm not going to take the time every day to type this up. My real job has been grinding me lately, so I gotta be bringing you guys as much content as I can. But I'm gonna go ahead and read it for you. Okay, we've got Hunter Henry getting the extension. Let's talk Hunter Henry briefly for a moment. And, I think this is an interesting one because Eli Raridon was really getting a lot of hype the last few weeks. And I think Eli Raridon definitely, potential to be a guy coming off that major knee injury that, does see a dynasty value rise over the next couple of seasons. 3rd round pick spent. Hunter Henry is going to be 32 years old this year. Now, that all being said, he gets the extension. It's a 2-year, $16 million deal. I'm going to go ahead and check for you guys. And you know what? I'm going to do it on the spot here. I don't have all the details yet. That's okay. I mean, we see that the estimate is, you've got an estimate figure here. 11 million cap hit this year. We don't know about 2027. Well, all being said, unfortunately, can't give you too much more insight on Hunter Henry as far as if they can get out of that deal. All to be said, the signal is sell. I would agree with it to some level, and obviously it's just reading the chart and telling you what the chart would do based off the market price movement. And again, we've broke very significantly over that band and that upper band here in the last few days, and it's been a steep rise right over the course of the week. That all being said, I think Hunter Henry's a totally fine rental tight end. Like, if you guys are contending and you don't want to spend big on a Colston Loveland or a Tyler Warren, I have zero issue with you just going out, sending a 3rd round pick for Hunter Henry. Maybe it takes a very late second, maybe a 28 second, but I doubt it. I think guys that you could probably exchange for Hunter Henry out there are really not going to be, the biggest roster breakers for you. I mean, if you go and look at this startup, Hunter Henry won in the 22nd round, like Dante Thornton, David Njoku, LaQuint Allen, Devin Neal, Christian Kirk. I mean, yeah, it's probably going to take a bit more than that realistically now that we're getting closer to the season. But I think a Skylar Bell, you potentially a Sean Tucker, someone like that, maybe a little bit of a late round pick sweetener thrown in could get you a Hunter Henry. I think all in all, this is a guy that had good connection with Drake May last year, gave you a solid amount of production, probably going to deliver on that again. I don't expect him to just fade into oblivion at it overnight. They did decide to pay him, right? That all being said, let's talk about my guy. Let's talk about my guy. I hope you stuck around for it. It is Jakobi Lane, okay? And I really want to see what his chart looks like because he is getting hype train left and right. And here you go. You can see it. They're telling you to sell, even though I completely and utterly disagree. But that's just because he broke this band. And unlike other people that play back into the channel a little bit, he's just consistently on the rise. Like, this is a guy who I expect his chart to just rise, rise, rise. 2,700 dynasty value points. I mean, I got him in the third round of rookie drafts this offseason, but he has officially secured that wide receiver 3 spot, I think, more or less, just based off of the camp news here. He's running ahead of Walker. He's running ahead of Surratt. He currently looks like Baltimore's definitive third wide receiver. Jeff Zebrick continues to report Lane as the clear leader of the group. He's delivering highlight reels left and right. This is the comment I was talking about, okay? He is lighting up camp, and we get this from Jamison Hensley. In 27 years of covering the Ravens, I'm not sure I've ever seen a rookie in training camp quite like Jakobi Lane. That is a loud statement. So yeah, this guy is making highlight reel grabs. If you didn't already from college, I mean, this is why I was so high on him. Go watch some of his college tape. This man is long. He's got incredible catch radius. He is making highlight catches even at USC. And while everyone was looking at Mekhi Lemon, this guy is making jumping one-handers in the back of the end zone. And sure, that might not translate to unbelievable amount of fantasy volume, but if you're on the field and you're making a name for yourself and you are proven to Lamar Jackson that you are worth giving an opportunity to, could be a red zone threat, could be used, as a long-term option in Baltimore to start to gain more experience. Only 22 years old here, 6'4", 205. I mean, you go do yourself a favor. Put on a Jakobi Lane highlight tape and crack a beer open. I do think that Jakobi Lane is a stud. I was spending as early as the 205, 206 on him in my rookie drafts this year. Not sure where you can get him now. Probably still around that range, but just a couple guys I like to throw out there, like, if you are an owner right now of Juwan Johnson and you're looking to get a little bit more wide receiver help, I'm totally happy making that flip. I think last year was a pretty big outlier year for him. I expect a lot more usage to roll through the receivers this year. Plus, you got a receiving back now in Travis Achane. Plus, you still got Alvin Kamara, who might be working out of the slot with another receiving back there. Interesting to see. Like, if you're an Emmett Johnson owner and you can make that flip, I'm fine with it. I think barring a massive injury to Kenneth Walker, he's not going to be wildly fantasy relevant. I think, the Pat Bryant shout was good. Like, I'm higher on Lane. I think there's a more clear path to opportunity in Baltimore there. And so that's mainly an opportunity shout. Like, although he might actually do something for you fantasy-wise this year, like Malik Washington, just because, of how much opportunity there is in that Miami Dolphins room, but 25 years old already, so I'd probably rather just re-roll with a 22-year-old Jakobi Lane and take a swing there. Let's talk about Cleveland for a second, though, because another one of these guys that, I actually had one of my buddies on the show a while back, and he watches tons of college football. Very, very good insider, especially for University of Washington. He was talking up Denzel Boston left and right. And yes, they're telling you to sell him. I disagree. I think Denzel Boston is still a buy. He's getting a ton of first-team work. Looks like he's making plays left and right. Todd Monken said the Browns, want to evaluate different wide receiver combinations with him, KC. It looks like he's taking that X role pretty significantly here. But I think Boston really got knocked for his speed coming out of college. People didn't expect him to be like this game breaker in the speed department. But what we always forget is that Denzel Boston was a kick returner for University of Washington. Denzel Boston is extremely shifty. He's very fast. You don't put fast guys, or you don't put slow guys back there to return kicks. Like, this is a guy that absolutely could be a deep downfield threat. He's got a big body. He's an alpha. Probably looking like one of the steals of the draft right now. He is shining in camp. All of his tape looks really good. Crisp route running, good hands. He's been effective in the red zone. Like, if you can still get Denzel Boston for a late first round pick in this year's rookie draft, if you haven't done it, you should absolutely be doing it. I'd be fine taking him as early as like the 108. I think Denzel Boston has a ton of upside. Just to name some other players in this range that went in this startup that I think are a great flip. Matthew Golden or Denzel Boston easily give me Denzel Boston. I think Quentin Johnston or Denzel Boston. I'll take Denzel Boston and re-roll there. I know QJ is maybe expected to get an uptick. I think, another shout here, Zach Charbonnet. I like Zach Charbonnet, but if you're not, super running back needy and you have some depth there, like I'm easily taking Denzel Boston. I think Chuba Hubbard to a flip to Denzel Boston is a great win for you. I think Chuba Hubbard's on borrowed time. I think Romeo Doubs in like a third or Romeo Doubs in a second for Boston. I would be totally fine doing that deal. So definitely some opportunities out there for you to go ahead and still buy Denzel Boston. Still only sitting at 3,700 dynasty value points. The market hasn't entirely caught up yet. And if people are not watching all the footage out there or listening to Dynasty Price Checks report here, you might be able to go out and steal them in your league. I'm gonna brush through a couple other ones real quick here and probably wrap it up pretty soon, just because we got the Dynasty Market Report coming tomorrow. I've got even more insight coming your way, so stick around for that one. The last guy I'm going to cover here is Breece Hall. I think, some people have been a little bit lower on Breece Hall. Yes, he's on the Jets. I understand. He did get that extension this offseason. However, the buzz has been pretty good. Breece Hall expected to be more featured. Connor Hughes reports from the Jets that they appear to feature Hall more prominently as the lead back than they did even last season. Braylon Allen, Isaiah Davis will remain involved to a small degree, but the expectation is for Breece Hall to have a much larger role this year than we've seen in the past. I like the upside for Breece Hall there. Let's talk about a couple other guys really quickly. Chase Brown, his role keeps growing. I don't even know what that means. Chase Brown was always going to be a league winner for you. He probably won you your leagues down the stretch last year. Isaiah Likely is a guy that Jackson Dart has been targeting a lot. People are saying number one target for Jackson Dart so far in camp has been Isaiah Likely. You've probably seen some good one-handed catches there. And then finally, the guy that I know everybody's been waiting on for me to cover, and I'm going to go ahead and put him up on screen right now. It's Cyrus Allen. I have been telling you left and right to buy Cyrus Allen for a long time, okay? Since February. You can go fact check me on this. This is a guy that has a clear opportunity. I like drafting guys that have opportunity, okay? And Cyrus Allen, like I mentioned, Travis Kelce, old. Rashee Rice, risky. Xavier Worthy, not at all the same type of receiver and has that ability to play that like Rice role that Mahomes loves so much. You've got Patrick Mahomes making plays to him left and right. When he went down for injury, just and missed a little bit of the practices there, people were flipping out in the Chiefs camp. They were like, oh my gosh, like they just lost their best playmaker. Like the fact that you are talking about that, like that about a rookie, training camp, pads on, pads off, whatever, is speaking volumes. And obviously, I don't need to glaze Patrick Mahomes and tell you when he's on, he's probably one of the best quarterbacks, if not the best quarterback in football. I think Cyrus Allen has a massive ceiling here. Yeah, he's a little older of a prospect, 23 years old. I got him off waivers a million times and in the fourth round, but now you're probably going to have to pay up for him. I watched him go in the second round the other day, I think at the 209 in that contract league I was alluding to. So really has flown up draft boards. You're probably going to have to pay up for him now. I hope you're early. If your league's still kind of sleeping, pick him up off your waivers right now and don't let that get away from you. Finally, Luther Burden expected to miss approximately 1 month with a moderate groin strain. I was already low on Burden, but everybody else in the entire world thinks Burden is going to break fantasy football. So you go ahead and decide where you land on that spectrum. You can be on my side, or you can go ahead and follow all the hype train here. 5,400 dynasty value points. Like I mentioned in that startup draft, Luther Burden going in the fourth round is just insane to me. I mean, A.J. Brown, Breece Hall went a round later than him. Cam Skadaboo a full round later than him. You've got Quinshon Judkins a full round later than him. T. Higgins, Zay Flowers a round and a half later than him. Mekhi Lemon a round and a half later than him. I mean, Saquon Barkley even. Like, these are potential league winners. You can get Jalen Waddle 2.5 rounds later than Luther Burden. I think a very good chance Jalen Waddle outscores Luther Burden this year. So, I'm not going to continue diving into my Luther Burden hate. All to be said, thank you guys so much for coming along today. I am going to be ripping as much content as I can for you guys during this training camp window and leading up to the season. We finally made it. We're getting NFL news. It feels so good. This is what's going to keep you ahead of your Dynasty League mates, so make sure you're subscribed here. Make sure you're following along across socials. I'm going to have other stuff coming out on TikTok. We're going to be doing some random TikTok impromptu live streams that are only going to be over there as well to do roster reviews. We're going to do roster reviews here here. I'm in the Discord 24/7 answering your guys' questions. It's for free. You can join right here, a link in the description, and we can make sure you're making the best trades you can before the season kicks off. Some cool guests coming to the Dynasty Trade Titan show now that it's season time as well, so make sure you're locked in and loaded. Appreciate your guys' consistent report. This is your report. Thanks for the support. We're ripping off the dome today. Appreciate your guys' support. I'll see you in the next one for the market report, and take care. Cheers.